Japan's political landscape is once again entering a period of uncertainty as Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's previously strong approval ratings show signs of erosion in the weeks leading up to a crucial national election. Once seen as a symbol of stability and decisive leadership within the long-dominant Liberal Democratic Party (LDP), Takaichi now faces growing public skepticism driven by economic anxiety, policy fatigue, and internal party pressures. While her government still retains a core base of conservative support, recent polling trends suggest that voter confidence is no longer as solid as it appeared earlier in her tenure, raising questions about how the election outcome could reshape Japan's political direction. Takaichi rose to prominence on promises of economic revitalization, national security strength, and a return to what supporters described as principled conservative governance. Her leadership initially benefited from a perception of clarity and firmness at a time when many voters felt uncertain about global instability, regional security threats, and the long-term future of Japan's economy. Early approval ratings reflected public optimism that her administration could provide decisive leadership after years of cautious, incremental policymaking. However, as the election approaches, the gap between campaign rhetoric and lived economic realities has become more visible to voters. One of the most significant factors contributing to the decline in approval is economic pressure on households. Despite government assurances that structural reforms and stimulus measures would gradually improve living standards, many Japanese citizens continue to struggle with rising prices, stagnant wages, and uncertainty about job security. Inflation, while moderate by international standards, has had an outsized psychological impact in a country long accustomed to price stability. The cost of food, energy, and daily necessities has become a central concern for voters, particularly among middle-income families and retirees living on fixed incomes. Critics argue that the government has been slow to deliver tangible relief, undermining confidence in its economic stewardship. Takaichi's economic strategy has emphasized long-term competitiveness, defense-related investment, and industrial resilience, particularly in advanced manufacturing and technology sectors. While these policies are popular among business leaders and national security advocates, they have not yet translated into immediate benefits for ordinary citizens. Opposition parties have seized on this disconnect, accusing the government of prioritizing corporate interests and geopolitical ambitions over everyday economic concerns. As election day nears, such arguments appear to be resonating with undecided voters. Another challenge for the Prime Minister has been public fatigue with the LDP itself. Although the party has dominated Japanese politics for decades, voters periodically express frustration with its perceived insularity and resistance to deeper reform. Takaichi's leadership initially appeared to offer a fresh image within the party, but critics now argue that her administration has relied too heavily on traditional power structures. Scandals involving campaign financing and political transparency, while not always directly linked to the Prime Minister, have reinforced broader doubts about political accountability and ethical governance. Foreign and security policy, once a source of strength for Takaichi, has also become more complex in the public mind. Her firm stance on regional security issues, including relations with China and North Korea, has won praise from conservative voters and allies who favor a more assertive Japanese role in regional defense. However, some segments of the electorate worry that increased defense spending and stronger military posture could strain public finances or entangle Japan more deeply in international conflicts. Balancing deterrence with diplomacy remains a delicate task, and the opposition has framed the government's approach as overly rigid. The Prime Minister's communication style has further influenced public perceptions. Known for her direct and uncompromising rhetoric, Takaichi has cultivated an image of decisiveness. While this approach appealed to voters seeking strong leadership, it has also drawn criticism for lacking empathy and flexibility. In times of economic stress, many voters respond more positively to leaders who acknowledge hardship and emphasize social support. Political analysts suggest that Takaichi's messaging has sometimes failed to fully address the emotional concerns of voters, contributing to a gradual softening of support. Internal dynamics within the LDP have also played a role in shaping the political environment. Although the party officially presents a united front ahead of the election, factional rivalries and quiet disagreements over policy direction persist. Some party members worry that a decline in approval ratings could weaken the LDP's overall performance, particularly in competitive districts. Behind the scenes, debates continue over whether the government should adjust its policy emphasis or campaign strategy to better appeal to swing voters. The opposition, while still fragmented, has sensed an opportunity. By focusing on cost of living issues, social welfare, and political transparency, opposition parties aim to attract voters who are dissatisfied but not necessarily ideologically opposed to the LDP. While it remains unlikely that the opposition could fully unseat the ruling party, even modest gains could alter the balance of power and constrain the Prime Minister's ability to pursue her agenda. For Takaichi, the election is therefore not only about retaining leadership but also about maintaining sufficient political capital to govern effectively. Public opinion surveys suggest that many voters remain undecided, reflecting a broader mood of caution rather than outright rejection. Takaichi's approval ratings, though lower than their peak, are not catastrophic, and her supporters argue that she remains one of the most capable leaders available. They emphasize her experience, clarity on national priorities, and willingness to take tough decisions. From this perspective, the recent dip in popularity is seen as a normal pre-election fluctuation rather than a decisive shift in public sentiment. Nevertheless, perception matters greatly in Japanese politics, where stability and consensus are highly valued. A visible decline in approval can influence media narratives, donor confidence, and internal party morale. As coverage increasingly focuses on the slipping ratings, the government faces pressure to demonstrate responsiveness and adaptability. Short-term policy adjustments, targeted economic measures, or a more empathetic campaign tone could help stabilize public opinion, but such efforts carry risks of appearing reactive or insincere. International observers are also watching the situation closely. Japan plays a critical role in regional security, global supply chains, and diplomatic alliances. Any sign of political instability raises questions about policy continuity and strategic commitments. While few expect a dramatic shift in Japan's core foreign policy regardless of the election outcome, a weakened prime minister could face limitations in pursuing ambitious initiatives or negotiating from a position of strength on the global stage. As election day approaches, the central question is whether Takaichi can reverse the downward trend in approval or at least prevent further erosion. Her campaign strategy appears focused on reaffirming her core message of strength, stability, and long-term vision, while selectively addressing immediate economic concerns. The effectiveness of this approach will depend on whether voters are willing to tolerate short-term discomfort in exchange for promises of future gains. Ultimately, the slipping approval ratings highlight the complex and often unforgiving nature of democratic politics. Leadership that appears decisive in one moment can seem disconnected in another, particularly when economic pressures intensify. For Prime Minister Takaichi, the coming election represents a critical test not only of her policies but also of her ability to adapt to shifting public expectations. Whether the dip in popularity proves temporary or transformative will shape Japan's political trajectory in the months and years ahead, making this election one of the most closely watched contests in recent memory.